If you're reading this, it means I broke the last rule, and you need to know what happens next. I never thought my life would come down to a list of rules taped to the back of a grimy break room door. I used to laugh at them, you know? Just another night shift at the old Rialto, sweeping up popcorn, counting down the hours until sunrise, and pretending not to notice the sticky floors or the flickering lights. It was supposed to be boring. Safe. The kind of job you take when you're desperate for cash, and even more desperate to be left alone. But there's nothing safe about the night shift at this theater. Not really. Not when you know what I know now. I'm not sure how much time I have left. The clock on my phone keeps glitching, skipping minutes, sometimes hours, like the theater itself is chewing up time and spitting it back out in pieces. I keep checking the exits, but every time I look, the hallway seems longer, the shadows deeper. I can hear something moving out there, soft, wet footsteps, like someone walking barefoot through spilled soda. Or maybe it's just my imagination. I wish it was just my imagination. I want to tell you everything, but I can't start at the beginning. Not yet. You need to understand the most important thing first. The rules are real. All of them. Even the ones that don't make sense. Especially the ones that don't make sense. And there's one rule they never write down. The last rule. The one you only learn about when it's already too late. I broke it. I didn't mean to, but I did. And now I'm trapped here, in this endless, looping night, with something that knows I don't belong. If you're still listening, if you're still reading, promise me you'll remember this. Some rules are written in blood, not ink. Some rules are older than the theater itself. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't ask about the last rule. And whatever you do, don't break it. Because once you do, there's no going back. I guess if you want to understand how I ended up here, you need to know how it started. My first night at the Rialto was almost exactly what you'd expect from a place that still had sticky floors and a faded, now showing sign with half the bulbs burned out. The kind of theater that time forgot, wedged between a payday loan place and a laundromat that never seemed to close. The air always smelled faintly of burnt popcorn and something sour, like spilled soda that had soaked into the carpet decades ago. I remember walking in, clutching my backpack, trying to look like I belonged. The lobby was empty except for a cardboard cutout of a superhero movie that had come out 3 summers ago. The only sound was the hum of the soda machine and the distant, echoing clatter of someone sweeping up in one of the theaters. That's when I met Greg. He was the first person I saw mid-20s, hair sticking up in every direction, wearing a faded Rialto polo and a name tag that just said G. He looked up from the counter, grinned, and said, "You must be the new blood. Welcome to the graveyard shift." I tried to laugh, but it came out awkward. "Yeah, that's me. Supposed to meet the manager." Greg nodded, jerking his thumb toward a door marked employees only. "He's in the back. Don't worry, he doesn't bite much." I followed him through a narrow hallway lined with movie posters so sun-bleached you could barely make out the titles. The break room was even smaller than I expected, just a battered table, a microwave that looked like it had survived a war, and a corkboard covered in faded flyers and passive-aggressive notes about cleaning up after yourself. And then there was the rule sheet. It was taped to the back of the door, written in blocky, all-caps Sharpie. Greg saw me staring and smirked. "Yeah, the rules. Don't let him freak you out. Most of them are just common sense. The rest, well, you'll figure it out." Before I could ask what he meant, the manager walked in. Mr. Harlan. He was tall, thin, and moved like he was always in a hurry, even when he was standing still. His eyes were too bright, and his handshake was cold and dry, like shaking hands with a mannequin. "Welcome to the Rialto," he said, voice too cheerful for midnight. "We're a family here. Just follow the rules, do your job, and you'll fit right in." He handed me a copy of the rule sheet. I scanned it, trying not to roll my eyes. No food in the projection booth. Don't leave the front doors unlocked after midnight. Don't answer the phone in Theater 3. Don't look directly at the screen in Theater 6 after 2:13 a.m. Some of them made sense, I guess. The rest sounded like the setup to a bad joke. I tried to play it cool. "Is this like a hazing thing? You guys trying to mess with the new kid?" Greg just grinned wider. "You'll see." Mr. Harlan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just remember, every rule is there for a reason. Some more important than others." I thought it was a joke. I was wrong. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have walked right back out that door. But I didn't. I signed the sheet, tucked it into my pocket, and told myself it was just another crappy job. Just another night. I had no idea what I'd really signed up for. I still have that first copy of the rule sheet, creased and stained from being folded and unfolded 100 times. I remember standing in the break room, reading it for the first time while Greg watched me with that lopsided grin, like he was waiting for a punchline only he knew. The list started off normal enough. 1. Lock all exterior doors by 12:01 a.m. 2. No food or drink in the projection booth. 3. Sweep the lobby every hour. 4. Don't leave popcorn in the machine overnight. I snorted. You guys really need to write this stuff down? What? Did someone get attacked by a rogue popcorn kernel? Greg chuckled. You'd be surprised. Keep going. I did. That's when things got weird. 5. If the phone rings in theater 3 after midnight, do not answer it. 6. If you see a child alone in the lobby after the last show, do not approach. Notify Mr. Harlan immediately. 7. Never look directly at the screen in theater 6 after 2:13 a.m. 8. If you hear someone knocking on the emergency exit, ignore it. No one leaves after midnight. I looked up, half expecting Greg to crack a smile, but he just shrugged. Yeah, those are the fun ones. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice sounded thin. Okay, so what happens if I break one? Does the ghost of Orville Redenbacher come for me? Greg's grin faded a little. Depends on the rule. Some of them, nothing happens. Or at least, nothing you'll notice right away. Others, well, let's just say you don't want to find out. I scanned the list again, my eyes catching on the more cryptic entries. 9. If you find a ticket stub dated before 1987, burn it. 10. If you see someone in an usher's uniform you don't recognize, don't talk to them. 11. Never, ever go into the basement. 12. If you hear the projector running when no movie is scheduled, leave the booth and lock the door behind you. I tried to keep my tone light. So, what's the deal with Theater 6? Is it haunted or something? Greg hesitated, glancing at the clock. Let's just say, weird stuff happens in there. You'll see. Or you won't, if you're smart. I could feel a chill creeping up my spine, but I forced a smirk. And the kid in the lobby? That's not just a lost kid. He shook his head. Nope. If you see her, you call Harlan. Don't talk to her. Don't even look at her too long. I tried to brush it off, but the rules stuck in my mind like splinters. Some of them were so specific, so strange, it was hard not to wonder what had happened to make them necessary. Who writes a rule about burning old ticket stubs? Or ignoring someone knocking on the emergency exit? I looked at Greg, searching his face for any sign that this was all some elaborate prank. So, is there a rule about not asking questions? He grinned, but there was something tired in his eyes. Not officially, but you'll figure it out. There's always one more rule. The one they don't write down. I raised an eyebrow. And what's that? He just shook his head. If you have to ask, you're not ready to know. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. You guys really commit to the bit. Huh? Greg just shrugged. You'll see. Or you won't. Either way, just follow the rules, okay? All of them. I nodded, tucking the sheet into my pocket, but my mind was already racing. I wanted to believe it was all just theater hazing, a way to mess with the new guy. But the way Greg looked at me like he was warning me, not joking, made it hard to laugh. There's one rule they never write down. The last rule. The one you only learn about when it's already too late. I didn't know it then, but I was already in over my head. If you're reading this, maybe you can guess what that last rule is. Or maybe you already know. Either way, I'd love to hear your theories. Just remember, some questions are better left unanswered. My first real shift started like any other dead-end job. I clocked in at 11:58 p.m., the time glowing red on the ancient punch clock, and tried to ignore the way the numbers seemed to flicker, just for a second, as if the machine was struggling to keep up with reality. Greg handed me a broom and a dustpan, and with a mock salute, sent me off to sweep the lobby. The theater was almost empty by then. The last stragglers shuffled out, their faces washed pale by the harsh lobby lights, clutching half-finished sodas and crumpled popcorn bags. I watched them go, feeling a weird pang of envy. They got to leave. I was stuck here, in the liminal hour between yesterday and tomorrow, surrounded by the ghosts of 1,000 bad movies and the stale scent of butter flavoring. I swept the lobby, the bristles of the broom rasping over the sticky tiles. The silence was thick, broken only by the distant hum of the soda machine and the occasional creak from the old building settling. I tried to focus on the normal stuff: trash, popcorn, the weirdly satisfying thunk of a stray milk dud hitting the dustpan. But every so often, I'd catch a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. Just shadows, I told myself. Just the lights playing tricks. At 12:01 on the dot, Greg came out to lock the doors. He jangled the keys, glancing over his shoulder as he turned the deadbolt. "Always lock up on time," he said, voice low. "You don't want anyone wandering in after midnight." I tried to joke. "What? Do the vampires show up if you're late?" He didn't laugh. "Just lock up. Trust me." I nodded, feeling a little less sure of myself. The rules were starting to feel less like a joke and more like a warning. The hours crawled by. I wiped down counters, restocked the candy, and tried not to think about the rule sheet burning a hole in my pocket. Every so often, I'd hear a noise, a soft tapping from the far end of the hallway, the faintest whisper of a child's giggle echoing from the empty arcade. I told myself it was just the building settling, or maybe Greg messing with me. But when I peeked into the arcade, the machines were all dark, their screens blank and lifeless. At 1:30 a.m., Greg found me in the break room, staring at the clock. "You surviving?" he asked, dropping into the chair across from me. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's just quiet. Too quiet." He grinned. "Give it time. The Rialto gets weird after midnight." I rolled my eyes. "You mean weirder than the rules?" He shrugged. "You'll see. Just remember, don't get curious. That's how people get in trouble." I wanted to ask what he meant, but he stood up, stretching. "I'm gonna check the projection booth. You wanna come?" I hesitated, remembering the rule about no food or drink in the booth. I glanced at my half-finished soda, then at Greg. He caught my look and shook his head. "Leave it here. Trust me." We walked down the hallway, the carpet muffling our footsteps. The projection booth was cramped and hot, filled with the low whir of machines and the faint smell of ozone. Greg checked the reels, muttering to himself, while I peered through the little window into Theater 6. The screen was dark, the seats empty, but for a split second, I thought I saw something move, a shadow flitting across the aisle, too quick to be real. I blinked and it was gone. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Greg didn't look up. "See what?" I shook my head. "Nothing. Must have been my imagination." He gave me a look. "You'll get used to it. Or you won't." We left the booth, and I tried to shake off the feeling of being watched. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of menial tasks and mounting unease. Every time I thought I heard something, a door creaking, a faint knock from the emergency exit, I forced myself to ignore it. I followed the rules, even the stupid ones, because suddenly they didn't seem so stupid anymore. At 2:12 a.m., I was sweeping near Theater 6 when I heard the faintest sound, a whisper, like someone calling my name from inside the theater. I froze, broom in hand, heart pounding. The rule flashed through my mind: never look directly at the screen in Theater 6 after 2:13 a.m. I checked my phone. 2:12. I swallowed, backing away from the door, refusing to look inside. The whisper faded, replaced by the low hum of the projector starting up, even though no movie was scheduled. I almost opened the door. I almost broke the rule. But something, fear, instinct, maybe just dumb luck, stopped me. I turned and walked away, broom clutched tight, refusing to look back. I almost missed the first sign. If I'd gone in, I don't think I'd be here to tell you this story. But that was just the beginning. It didn't take long for someone to slip up. That's the thing about rules: no matter how many times you read them, no matter how much you tell yourself you'll remember, eventually you get comfortable. You get careless. And the Rialto doesn't forgive carelessness. It was my third night on the job, and the routine was starting to feel almost normal. Greg and I had fallen into a rhythm. He handled the projection booth. I swept the lobby and restocked the candy, and we both pretended not to notice the weird stuff that happened after midnight. The rules were always in the back of my mind, but I'd started to think maybe they were just there to keep us on our toes. Maybe the real horror was just boredom. That night, it was Jamie who messed up. She was new, barely 19, with a nervous laugh and a habit of chewing her thumbnail when she was stressed. She was supposed to lock the side door after the last show, But she got distracted. Someone had spilled a giant soda in Theater 2, and she was still mopping it up when the clock hit 12:01. I didn't notice at first. I was in the break room, counting out change for the register, when Greg burst in, looking pale. "Did you hear that?" he asked, voice tight. "Hear what?" I said, glancing up. He shook his head. "Never mind. Just come with me." We found Jamie in the lobby, staring at the side door. It was open just a crack, letting in a sliver of cold, damp air. She looked up at us, eyes wide. "I thought I locked it." "I swear I did." Greg didn't say anything. He just closed the door, turned the lock, and checked it twice. Then he looked at me, his face grim. "Go check the theaters. Make sure everything's normal." I nodded, heart pounding. I started with Theater 1 empty, just the faint smell of popcorn lingering in the air. Theater 2 was the same, except for the sticky patch on the floor where Jamie had been cleaning. Theater 3 was dark, the seats empty, the screen blank. But when I got to Theater 4, I stopped cold. The projector was running, even though no movie was scheduled. The screen flickered with black and white static, and in the front row, a single figure sat slumped in a seat. I couldn't see their face, just the outline of a head. Shoulders hunched, hands folded in their lap. I swallowed hard. "Hello? We're closed." The figure didn't move. I glanced at my phone. 12:17 a.m. I remembered the rules. If you see a customer after closing, notify the manager. Do not approach. I backed out of the theater, heart hammering, and nearly ran into Greg in the hallway. "There's someone in Theater 4, I whispered. He didn't look surprised. "Stay here." He went inside, and I waited, listening to the muffled sound of the projector. After a minute, he came back out, face pale. "Was it?" I started. He shook his head. "Don't ask. Just help Jamie with the lobby." We spent the rest of the night in uneasy silence. The projector in Theater 4 kept running, even after Greg unplugged it. The figure never left the seat. When the threadbare, the seats a little more faded, the smell of old popcorn and mildew sharper, almost sour. The other staff avoided it when they could, trading shifts or making excuses, but that night, it was my turn. Greg handed me the cleaning kit with a look that was almost apologetic. "Just be quick," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "And remember the rule. Don't look at the screen after 2:13. I checked my phone. 1:58 a.m. Plenty of time, I told myself. Just sweep up, wipe down the seats, and get out. Easy. The theater was empty when I walked in, the only light coming from the glowing exit signs and the faint, bluish glow of the screensaver on the projector. I started at the back, working my way down the aisles, the brush of the broom echoing in the cavernous dark. My mind wandered, replaying the events of the past few nights: the open door, the static in Theater 4, the figure that vanished with the dawn. I tried to convince myself it was all just stress, the product of too many horror movies and not enough sleep. But then I heard it, the soft, unmistakable sound of film threading through a projector. I froze, broom in hand, and looked up. The screen flickered to life, casting long, warped shadows across the empty seats. I checked my phone again. 2:07 a.m. I should have left. I know that now. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and fear can make you reckless. I crept closer, heart pounding, as the film began to play. It wasn't any movie I recognized. The picture was grainy, black and white, the sound warped and distant, like it was coming from underwater. On the screen, a crowd of people sat in a theater. This theater, I realized, down to the peeling wallpaper and the crooked exit sign. The camera panned across their faces, each one pale and expressionless, eyes wide and unblinking. They didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. I shivered, glancing around. The seats were empty, but the air felt crowded, thick with the weight of invisible eyes. The film cut to a close-up of the screen, my screen, then to the projection booth, where a shadow moved behind the glass. I looked up, half expecting to see someone there, but the booth was empty. The film kept rolling, the images growing stranger. The lobby, flooded with water, the concession stand, crawling with something that looked like hands, dozens of them, reaching and grasping. The emergency exit, wide open, darkness spilling in like ink. I took a step back, the broom clattering to the floor. The audience on the screen turned, all at once, and stared straight at me. Their mouths opened, impossibly wide, and a low, droning hum filled the theater, vibrating in my bones. I stumbled, nearly tripping over a seat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. 2:12 a.m. I remembered the rule. Never look directly at the screen in Theater 6 after 2:13 a.m. I turned away, squeezing my eyes shut, but the hum grew louder, pressing against my skull. I could feel the eyes of the audience on me, could almost hear their breath, cold and damp on the back of my neck. Something brushed past me, a chill, like walking through a cloud of gnats. I opened my eyes just a crack, just enough to see the aisle filling with shadows, shapes that flickered and twisted, never quite solid. They moved toward the screen, merging with the flickering images, their faces stretching and blurring. I backed up, heart hammering, and nearly collided with the wall. The exit sign glowed red, a beacon in the darkness. I fumbled for the door, but my hand slipped on the handle, slick with sweat. The hum reached a fever pitch, and for a moment, I thought I saw myself on the screen standing in the aisle, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. The audience turned to look at me, their faces melting into a single, featureless mask. My phone buzzed again. 2:13 a.m. I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my back to the door. I could feel the screen's light burning through my eyelids, could hear the whisper of voices, dozens of them, all chanting in a language I didn't understand. I almost looked. God help me, I almost turned around. But then the projector sputtered, the film snapping with a sound like breaking bones. The screen went dark, the hum cut off mid-note, and the air rushed back into my lungs. I stumbled out into the hallway, gasping, the door slamming shut behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the broom. Greg was waiting for me, his face pale. "You okay?" I nodded, but I couldn't speak. "Not yet." He glanced at the door to Theater 6, then back at me. "You saw something, didn't you?" I swallowed, my mouth dry. I saw something I was never meant to see. He didn't ask what. He just put a hand on my shoulder and steered me back toward the break room. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that audience, staring, waiting, their mouths open in a silent scream. And I knew, deep down, that the rules weren't just about keeping us safe. They were about keeping something else in. I didn't see Mr. Harlan much during my first week. He was one of those managers who seemed to exist in the margins, always around, but never quite present, like a shadow you only notice when the lights flicker. But after what happened in Theater 6, he found me. It was just after sunrise. I was sitting in the break room, hands still trembling, replaying the midnight movie over and over in my mind. The door creaked open, and there he was, looking sharper than anyone had a right to at 6 in the morning. His suit was pressed, his hair perfectly in place, but his eyes were tired, ringed with shadows. He sat across from me, folding his hands on the table. Rough night. I tried to play it off, but my voice cracked. You could say that. He studied me for a long moment, then slid a fresh copy of the rule sheet across the table. "You followed the rules. That's good. Most people don't last this long." I stared at the list, the words blurring. "What happens if you don't?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You've seen a taste. The Rialto is old. Older than the city, older than the street it sits on. Places like this, they collect things. Memories. Regrets. Sometimes, things that aren't supposed to be here." I swallowed, the memory of the audience in Theater 6 still burning behind my eyes. "So the rules keep us safe?" He shook his head. "Not just you. The rules keep everything in balance. They're not arbitrary. They're not a joke. Every rule is written in response to something that happened. Something that got out, or tried to." I glanced at the list, my finger tracing the lines. "What about the ones that don't make sense? The phone in Theater 3, the ticket stubs, the kid in the lobby." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Some things are better left unexplained. The less you know, the safer you are. Curiosity is dangerous here. That's why there's always one more rule. The last rule. The one you never, ever break." A chill ran down my spine. "What is it?" He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "You don't ask about the last rule. You don't try to find it. You don't even think about it. Because the moment you do, it starts to notice you. I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. So what? This place is cursed, he shrugged. Call it a curse, call it a pact, call it whatever you want. The Rialto isn't the only place like this. There are others. Old theaters, old hotels, places that have seen too much. They all have their rules. Some are stricter than others. He stood, straightening his tie. Some rules are for your own good. Some are for everyone else's. Just remember, you're not the first to ask questions. And you won't be the last. He paused at the door, glancing back at me. If you want to last here, you follow the rules. All of them. Especially the ones you don't understand. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with the rule sheet and 1,000 new questions. I know some of you out there have worked places like this, places with secrets, with rules that don't make sense. Maybe you've heard stories, or maybe you have your own. If you do, I want to hear them. Maybe together, we can figure out what these places really are. But for now, all I had were the rules, and the knowledge that there was one more one I wasn't supposed to know. He told me about the last rule, the one you never, ever break. There's a moment in every nightmare when you realize you're trapped, when you know, deep down, that no matter how fast you run or how loud you scream, you're not getting out. That's what the Rialto felt like after Mr. Harlan's warning, like I'd woken up inside someone else's bad dream, and the only way out was through. The days blurred together. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye. A flicker of movement in a darkened hallway. A face in the reflection of the popcorn machine that wasn't mine. The rules became a mantra, something to cling to when the world started to slip. But the more I tried to follow them, the more the theater seemed to push back. It started with the clocks. One night, I glanced at my phone and saw 1:47 a.m. I blinked, and it was 1:32. The punch clock in the break room spun backward, then forward, then froze at 12:01. I asked Greg if he noticed, but he just shrugged, eyes hollow. It's always like this, eventually. You get used to it, or you don't. I didn't get used to it. I started writing down the time every 15 minutes, but the numbers never matched. Sometimes I'd lose hours, sometimes I'd gain them. Sometimes I'd find myself standing in the lobby, broom in hand, with no memory of how I got there. The theater itself changed, too. Hallways stretched longer than they should. Doors appeared where there hadn't been any before. I'd turn a corner and find myself back where I started. The same faded poster of a forgotten movie staring down at me with blank, accusing eyes. One night, I heard the phone ring in Theater 3. I froze, remembering the rule. If the phone rings after midnight, do not answer it. But the ringing didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, echoing through the empty halls. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it wormed its way in, a voice whispering my name, over and over. I ran. I don't know how long I ran, or where I was going. The theater twisted around me, the walls pulsing like a living thing. I stumbled into the lobby, gasping for breath, and found Greg waiting for me. You can't keep running, he said, voice flat. It wants you to break the rules. That's how it gets in. I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, but all I could do was shake my head. What happens if I do? He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something ancient in his eyes. You don't want to know? But I did. God help me, I did. That's when the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the theater. I fumbled for my phone, but the screen was dead. The battery drained even though I'd charged it an hour before. I heard footsteps, soft, shuffling, coming from every direction at once. The air grew cold, thick with the smell of old popcorn and something rotten. A door slammed somewhere behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, and saw a figure standing in the glow of the exit sign. It was the girl from the lobby, the one from the rules. She stared at me with wide, empty eyes, her mouth moving in a silent plea. I remembered the rule. If you see a child alone in the lobby after the last show, do not approach. Notify Mr. Harlan immediately. But Mr. Harlan was gone. Greg was gone. I was alone. She took a step toward me, her bare feet leaving wet prints on the carpet. The air buzzed with static, the world tilting sideways. I tried to back away, but the floor stretched out beneath me, the lobby growing longer and longer, the doors receding into the distance. Help me, she whispered, her voice echoing inside my skull. I wanted to run. I wanted to follow the rules. But something inside me snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion, or fear, or just the need to know. I stepped forward. The world shattered. I was everywhere and nowhere, standing in every theater at once. The screens flickered with images of myself sweeping, running, hiding, breaking the rules over and over. The audience from Theater 6 stared at me, their faces melting into a single, endless scream. The phone in Theater 3 rang and rang, the sound burrowing into my bones. I saw Greg, trapped behind the glass of the projection booth, pounding on the window. I saw Mr. Harlan, his face twisted in terror, reaching for me with hands that weren't quite human. And I saw the rule sheet, the last line written in blood, "Do not break the last rule." But I had to know. I had to see what would happen. Would you have done the same? Would you have followed the rules? Or would you have reached out, just once, to touch the darkness? I reached for the girl's hand. The world snapped back into place. The lights flickered on. The theater was empty, silent, the only sound my own ragged breathing. But I knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same. I had broken the last rule, and now, something was coming for me. I wish I could tell you what happened next in a way that made sense. I wish I could lay it out, step by step, like a story with a beginning, middle, and end. But the truth is, after I broke the last rule, time stopped working the way it should. The Rialto unspooled itself, and I fell right through the cracks. At first, I thought I'd made it out. I was standing in the lobby, the lights humming overhead, the smell of popcorn sharp and almost comforting. My hands were shaking, but I was alive. I could hear the distant sound of traffic outside, the world still turning. For a moment, I let myself believe it was over. But then I noticed the details, the way the posters on the wall all showed movies I'd never heard of, titles that twisted and changed when I tried to read them. The clock above the concession stand spun in slow, lazy circles, the hands melting into each other. My reflection in the glass doors was just a shadow, flickering at the edges, never quite matching my movements. I tried to leave. I walked to the front doors, pushed them open, and stepped out into the night. But the street outside was wrong, empty, silent. The buildings across the way warped and distant, like a set built for a movie that never got made. I turned around, and the Rialto was still there, its neon sign buzzing, the letters rearranging themselves into words I couldn't pronounce. I ran through the lobby, down the hallways, into every theater, but each door led me back to the same place, the break room. The rule sheet taped to the door, my name scrawled at the bottom in handwriting that wasn't mine. I started to forget things. My own name slipped away, replaced by 1,000 others. I remembered stories I'd never lived, other night shifts, other theaters, other rules. I saw faces in the dark, people who'd broken the rules before me, their eyes hollow, their mouths stretched in silent screams. Some of them looked familiar. Some of them looked like Greg. One of them looked like me. I realized then what the Rialto really was. Not just a theater, not just a building, but a trap, a place that fed on stories, on fear, on the people who wandered in and thought they could outsmart the rules. A liminal space, a hungry thing, older than the city, older than the world outside. Maybe it was always here, waiting for someone to break the last rule. I tried to fight it. I tried to hold on to who I was, to remember the sound of my own voice, the feel of my own skin. But the theater was inside me now, whispering its rules, its secrets, its endless hunger. I could feel myself changing, my thoughts stretching, looping, repeating. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the glass, and for a split second, I'd see someone else staring back. I'm not sure if I ever left that theater. Maybe I'm still there, sweeping the same stretch of lobby, watching the same midnight movie, waiting for the next new hire to walk through the door. Maybe I'm just another story, another warning, another name on the rule sheet. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear the voices of others, people like you, reading this, listening, wondering if it's all just a story. Maybe you've worked a job with rules that didn't make sense. Maybe you've seen something out of the corner of your eye, something you weren't supposed to notice. Maybe you've heard about the Rialto effect, that feeling when you're stuck in a loop, doing the same thing over and over, and you can't remember how it started. If you have, you're not alone. There are more of us than you think. We're the ones who broke the rules, who asked too many questions, who couldn't leave well enough alone. We're the ones who got curious, who reached out when we should have run. So if you ever find yourself working the night shift at a place with too many rules, pay attention. Don't get comfortable. Don't get careless. And whatever you do, don't break the last rule. Because once you do, you might never leave. Or worse, you might become part of the story, just like me. If you're reading this, it means you've made it to the end, or maybe just the beginning. I don't know what I am anymore, not exactly. A warning, a memory, a shadow in the corner of your eye. But I do know this. The Rialto is always hungry, and it always needs someone to keep the rules. So I'm leaving this for you, whoever you are. Maybe you're the next night shift hire, desperate for a paycheck and a little peace and quiet. Maybe you're just curious, poking around where you shouldn't. Either way, you need to know what you're walking into. The rule sheet is taped to the break room door, just like always. The ink is fresh, the paper crisp, but the words are older than you can imagine. Some of the rules will make sense. Most won't. You'll laugh at them at first. You'll think it's all a joke, a bit of theater to haze the new kid. But you'll learn. We all do. Lock the doors by 12:01. Don't answer the phone in Theater 3. Don't look at the screen in Theater 6 after 2:13. Burn any ticket stub dated before 1987. If you see a child alone in the lobby, don't approach. And never, ever go into the basement. You'll notice there's a space at the bottom of the sheet, a blank line where a rule should be. I can't write it down. No one can. That's the last rule, the one you only learn when it's already too late. The one that changes every time, for every person. You'll know it when you see it. Or maybe you won't, and you'll end up like me. If you're smart, you'll walk away now. Tear up the rule sheet, leave your name tag on the counter, and never look back. But if you're like I was, curious, stubborn, hungry for answers, you'll stay. You'll follow the rules at first. You'll think you're safe. But the Rialto is patient. It waits. It watches. It learns. And when you finally break the last rule, you'll understand. You'll see the theater for what it really is, a place that feeds on stories, on secrets, on the people who think they can outsmart it. So here's my advice, for what it's worth. If you ever work the night shift, remember, never break the last rule. Don't ask what it is. Don't try to find it. Just do your job, keep your head down, and hope the theater doesn't notice you. But if you do break it, well, maybe you'll be the one leaving the next rule sheet. Maybe you'll be the next story. Tell me, what would your last rule be? Leave it in the comments. Maybe together, we can figure out how to break the cycle. Or maybe, just maybe, the cycle is already broken, and something new is waiting in the dark.